Hi, welcome back. I'd like to talk about the don'ts of writing for strings, the things that you should not do or not encouraged to do. Okay, so let's touch on the first point. Don't be afraid to push envelope when you write. So I think anybody who had taken composition lessons, after you learn the fundamentals, the rudiments of writing, the next thing probably your teacher would encourage you to really go for it. Go for it. Don't worry about being not being proper enough, not correct enough, because that's always the biggest challenge for a lot of people because you learn so many rules and then you're afraid to break the rules. I mean, when you start composing, just do it. Just write whatever you want, whatever you hear in your head, right? So don't be afraid to push envelope. But the next point that I want to get to, from a glance, it looks like it's very contrary to the first point, which is to not be shy to ask players if something is playable. When you're really brave and writing a lot of things that represents the sounds that you hear in your head, there's a danger. The danger is the players probably can't play it because what you hear is probably not idiomatic enough for the certain instruments that you're writing. So always don't be shy to ask players if something can be played. Okay, so players would always be glad that the composers ask them if they can play certain things, because the last thing a player wants is to sit on a rehearsal stage or in a studio, recording studio, scratching their heads over certain ridiculous stuff that we wrote, right? So this is very important. Always make some friends with string players. They will help you. They certainly will help you. Make a few more friends, because different string players, they have different ways of playing the instruments, and they probably have different skill sets as well. So one string player that can do a lot of things doesn't mean the other guy can do the same thing. All right? So you want to know who you're writing for, first of all. If it's a regular symphony orchestra, what can you not write? You know, if it's a very specific ensemble that does a very specific kind of music, what are their specialties? You need to learn all those things. Okay, so that really goes case by case, but there's a certain limit for say a symphony orchestra can do, because certain things are not idiomatic. Um, the next thing would be the technical side. When you're writing for a violinist, violist, or a cellist, be careful with double stops in an ensemble situation. Um, for example, if it's a fast passage, you absolutely don't want to write consecutive octaves. Da, 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 da. That is, even though you see that in Paganini and a lot of showpieces, concerti, but you don't want to do that in an ensemble, because when everybody's playing double stops together, it will be very tricky for people to agree with the intonation. So it's highly discouraged to write too many crazy double stops, especially in fast passages. So unless you're writing a solo part, a solo cadenza in an orchestra piece, let's say the concertmaster has a solo all by himself, and the rest of the orchestra is either silent or holding a chord or just playing some simple accompaniment, then you can go for it. Technically, you can go for it, but otherwise, don't do that. If it's 2D playing, or a section playing the same passage, you can write double stops but divisi, so that the people can divide it up. Divisi. You just write div dot. Okay, divisi. That means divide. So they would divide the double stops into two parts. So the inside player will play the lower part, the outside player will play the high part. In general, that's how it works. The other thing is, really, you got to check the range of the instruments. I mean, duh. I'm sure you already know that. I don't need to tell you that. So make some friends. Again, make some friends. Ask them, what's the range? What's the effective range of a certain instrument? Violin, viola, or cello, or even double bass. Just ask your friends about it, or just buy a book, an orchestration book. It always helps. Um, the other thing is, don't worry about bowings. I came across a lot of non-string player writers, um, who like to put in bowings, thinking that would help us, the string musicians, to play. But to the contrary, usually they're not helpful, and not only they're not helpful, they are actually wasting our time. Forgive me for being blunt, because when you're putting bowings that don't really make sense, there's a danger that we have to stop and look at it and wonder what the composer means. More often than not, they don't mean anything. They just want you to, for example, they put a lot of down bows, down, 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 down. Oh, and then after we asked them, we realized, oh, they simply want us to play accent, 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 accent. So as a string player, I would just write accent, 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 or sometimes people write up, 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 up. I'm like, wow, this is 16 notes. It's really fast. If we all play up, 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 it's not going to be together. It's not going to be clean. So, and then after we asked them, oh, we just want it to be short. That's why we put up, 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 up. So in that case, we'll just put dot, 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 and we'll still play down, up, down, out, down, down, up. The effect is exactly the same as they wanted. But if we play up, 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 it's gonna sound a lot dirtier. So that's very, very important. Okay, so don't worry about the bowings. Really, leave it up to us when in doubt. The last thing I would like to talk about is, don't write harmonics like this. Don't write harmonics like this. It will also waste studio time if it's a studio situation, or rehearsal time, because you don't want the players to wonder what you mean by that. Very often when people say, oh, when you ask them, what do you mean by this, right? What do you mean by this? They would say, oh, I want it to be 2 octaves higher. And then you're like, oh, so it should be written as this. You see the difference? Right? So this is artificial harmonic. I'm just making an example right now, okay? So they actually want the sounding note 2 octaves higher, which is actually this. So this sounding note, this is the fundamental note, but the sounding note would be 2 octaves higher up there, which means you press one finger all the way down on this note, and then put your 4th finger up here, just barely touching the string. Okay, and then you'll get 2 octaves higher. This is just an example. You can learn all this from an orchestration book, or you can write me a message to ask me. I'll always be very happy to help you out on this. So yeah, writing for harmonics is super important. Okay, don't leave the string players wondering what's happening out here. So I hope all these things helped, and I'll see you next episode, hopefully. Thank you.